Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal Fans series, our spin-off show from the LTA Typical Show, in which I'm joined by a guest to have a chat about their Arsenal fandom. We, of course, spoke to lead judges on our opening day episodes. We went into a lot of the details about how he joined AftB and some of the good and bad things that have gone with that. And you can, of course, check that out on the channel. But for episode 2, I'm very, very happy to be joined by more than just a simple fan, but an ex-pro himself, former Arsenal striker, Kevin Campbell. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
Tom, I'm very well, and thanks for the lovely introduction.
No problem at all. I mean, it's anything I say is probably a little bit of understating things, to be fair. But you're so ingrained into Arsenal fan social video culture these days. I mean, I struggle to think of another. I was going to say Arsenal player, but player in general that's genuinely as involved as you get, not just with Arsenal fans, but with Everton fans and of course with the overriding media as well. And we will get on to that. But I do want to first kick off with a little bit of kind of history and start off with your first memory of Arsenal, not necessarily as a player, but just as someone growing up. When did you first become aware of Arsenal and why?
Well, my brother was an Arsenal fan, and I always loved playing football from, nipper. From when I could walk, I had a ball with me. But he was always an Arsenal fan, and it was the time where there were other teams like Liverpool and all that who were around, but Arsenal, because of my brother, I suppose. My brother was Arsenal, so I then, sort of one magazine all of a sudden appeared, and there was a poster in it with the Arsenal team, and that was my team. That was it. Then I wouldn't have it at school. Some of the boys would support Liverpool, big Liverpool family actually. But those were the days where there was Arsenal were playing Liverpool round after round. We used to go to replay after replay, and we'd be there listening to it on the radio. You know what I mean? It was crazy times in the 70s, but unbelievable. That was my first time of really understanding what it was to be an Arsenal fan, was through my brother.
And obviously, there's not many players really out there that get to play for the club that they support. So talk us through that process and that feeling, because it's not something that all players get to experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite weird actually, Tom, because the secondary school that I went to, Henry Fulton in Clapham in South London, 3 years above me was Michael Thomas.
Right, yeah.
So when I went to the school, had football trials, and then people know you're a good footballer, then they start telling you about who's above, because the school was noted to be a football school. Mm-hmm. Then when they tell you there's a lad 3 years above who, he's going to be going into England schoolboys and that, you could imagine me, a kid from Brixton, didn't know anything. All of a sudden, I'm hearing there's a lad at the school who probably could go in a career. Andy Gray, who played at Crystal Palace, played for Spurs and all that, played at Palace with Wrighty and stuff. He used to live around the corner from me. But he was starting out his journey. He wasn't quite fully there yet when I was a kid. Then obviously a few years later, Michael Thomas was there, and we're going to training. Because that's when you could train at different clubs. So you're going to Chelsea, you're going to Arsenal, you train at all different clubs. But to see his trajectory, and obviously he left and went into the pros, went to apprentice and then pros, and then I'm there. I'm trying to chart his development, and then I'm trying to make it at Arsenal as well. It's pretty ironic that so many boys from South London, Rocky and Paul Davis, who was obviously a bit before Michael Thomas's time there, that South London connection just was so strong at Arsenal, and it did help having the likes of Pat Rice and Vic Akers there training us as kids. It did.
That feeling that when, if you're an Arsenal fan as well and you go into the team that you're playing for, and obviously you've played for plenty of clubs since when you left Arsenal, is the feeling different when you score for Arsenal in comparison to, say, scoring for an Everton or a Forest, etc.?
Well, Tom, when you Just put it this way. Let's not even talk about scoring. Let's talk about getting that letter that
Yeah.
came to say Arsenal were going to take me on as a YTS, because none of us knew. That's when you waited. There was no, they wouldn't call you. They sent you an official letter. So the official letter came and you could see the Arsenal badge on the letter. So, I was waiting for the postman. The postman turned up. I went and opened it and I'd been accepted and I was the happiest, floating around, obviously. Then it gets serious because you then realize, hold on a minute, that's my job now. Being a footballer is my job. I'm not a professional yet. But that's the aim. And, likes of David Hillier and Alan Miller, who's no longer with us, bless him, and some of the other lads who were there at the time, Lee Francis and stuff. We then all join up. Players from Ireland come over, Stephen Morrow and Pat Scully and all that come over. And that's where we embark on trying to be pros. And that's the exciting part, Tom, to be on the inside. Because I only ever knew the outside.
Yeah.
First game I went to was in 1977, and played. I couldn't even afford to get in. It was when they used to open the gate to the North Bank. Is when me and my mates rushed into, and then that's where it took a totally different turn, because when you actually see it live, the Green Bays of Highbury, it's a different feeling. You could watch it on TV and you get excited, or listen to on the radio, but once you're there and you see it, you're hooked. It really does hook you. And to score my first Arsenal goal at the clock end, in the North Bank.
Yeah.
I've stood on the North Bank. I've stood on the clock. I stood wherever I could, to be honest.
Yeah,
Tom,
as we all
because
have.
couldn't afford the money. You go where you can get in. But to score my first goal in front of the North Bank. If that was my Arsenal career, then
happy?
I would have been happy. But there was a lot more to come.
There was a lot more to come, and obviously this isn't these types of shows, and I imagine we'll end up talking to other players too. And I don't want this to be kind of a biopic about your career, because there are plenty of places where I know you've spoken about your career. But I want to kind of go into more of the social side of things and the differences maybe that you see between football players now. And of course, your son is a player who's playing in the modern era of football and deals with the public side of things and the stresses of that too. But now you are in the media and you comment on football and you're very much interactive with social media. Do you feel like if you were playing now, and there was that pressure, especially with Arsenal, of how much there is on them as well, do you feel like you would have dealt with being a player any differently, or do you feel like you would have any different other issues or problems would have arisen during your playing days?
I think there's more issues now, obviously, because of the directness of and the speed of how things can escalate. You have a bad game at Arsenal and you don't play well, people are on you straight away. Trust me, you don't need to tell a player he's playing badly. The player knows. But with social media, etc., there's so many quality things that can happen for you. But it's a balance, because you have to weigh the good with the bad. Now, if I was a modern day player now playing, I don't think I would be on social media, because I don't think it's really conducive to, because the emotions fly really high, and you might be at a vulnerable spot after a game and you might say the wrong thing or react the wrong way. We've seen it happen. Footballers are human beings as well. So I think I would have let my agent and stuff deal with that side of it, and I just concentrate and focus on the football, because at the end of the day, Tom, as a footballer, that's what matters most. If you win and you play well, great. If you lose and you play poorly, you're going to get stick. That's the nature of the beast. You don't need all the periphery stuff.
And obviously, with your boy playing as well, do you feel like sometimes that you have to take either a step back, and that you can't necessarily, there's always that willing and the want to give advice, but do you think there's any part of you that goes, am I qualified in this day and age to give advice in certain aspects?
Tom, that's a good question. I think what he's got to do, he's got to find his own way, Tom. Obviously, he can ask me my advice, and I'll tell him my opinion.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I've not been in the era of social media. He was on social media before I was.
Yeah.
When you think about it, I got on Twitter because somebody else was impersonating Kevin Campbell. That's why I got on Twitter. I knew nothing
Yeah.
about it. And when people are coming
What
up
are
to
they
you
doing?
and
What's that
asking,
account doing?
no, but when people are coming up to you saying you never respond to my
Right.
replies, and I'm talking about what you're talking about. I said, well, you put the tweet out and I'm replying and you never reply. I said, I'm not on Twitter. I said, you are. So I'm thinking, so I got,
Yeah.
I got clued up and I got wise and I thought, right, I can't be having somebody else being me. So, and as soon as you get the tick, then obviously they shut their site, their account down. But for my son, he's 21 now. He's trying to make a good career for himself. One thing he is, Tom, he's sensible. He's sensible, and I think that has to prevail. If you're sensible with it, and you don't take it too serious, and you don't take it too, what's the best word? If you don't take it too serious, and you don't rely on it too much, because one thing the Twitter sphere is, it can be fantastic when you're winning, but it can be real toxic when things ain't going your way. So again, there's a balance, and I think he's as I say, he's a sensible lad, and he's got the balance right now.
Now, beyond football, the actual sport, and we have already touched upon social media, but you very quickly, I say quickly, but you've obviously been in and around media, you've done punditry, but it's only in the last correct me if I'm wrong, kind of 3-4 years that you've been in and around the YouTube kind of scene, which obviously plenty of ex-pros and ex-Arsenal players in particular have been onto YouTube channels, but as I said at the start of the show, I can't think of a footballer, especially Arsenal, that's besides maybe Ben Foster, of course, who playing
he does a great, he's brilliant.
Oh, it's fantastic what he does, that is ingrained and is up for doing shows. I mean, I've seen you do shows on channels with 100 subscribers. I've seen you do shows with myself, with Sophie, of course, with Magic Mike. Whilst you're still working at times for Sky or with Amazon, what's the drive for you to do all of this stuff?
The drive for me to do it, really, Tom, is I'm an Arsenal fan, and I'm a fan of football, and the fans mean a lot. I don't ever want the fans to ever think that players don't care. Players do care. Sometimes it's time that the players can't do it. And if I have the time to dedicate an hour or a couple of hours to a show, I think it's only right. Fans have paid money to come and watch me play.
Yeah.
Fans have chanted my name. They've made me feel special. Now, if I could repay that even with an hour out of my time, then I'm going to do that. Especially with the lockdown as well, Tom. I think that was hard on everybody. And what Sophie and I and Princess Gooner at the time, we agreed on was we're going to put things out there for the fan base to look forward to. Because it was hard being stuck at home, maybe not having things to look forward to. You were doing shows, but that's when the Gooner universe kind of came together. And people were putting their shows out.
I'm stealing that.
The Gooner universe, they were putting things together, and you could kind of set your watch. I'm going to watch, Tom at this time. I'm going to watch Hybrid Squad at this time. I'm going to watch AFTV or whatever Burkamp Wonderland, Guns and Yellow Ribbon, whatever one is your thing. People kind of set in their program for the day of what they're going to watch. And I think that helped us through. We weren't great on the pitch, Tom. Let's be honest. We weren't great on the pitch, but we helped each other get through it. And I'm sure we're going to cover present Arsenal, but it was needed.
You said as to the reason why you got on Twitter initially was because someone asked you why you didn't reply to their tweet. When they said that to you in that moment, and you've gone, "Oh, I don't have Twitter," Do you think there's any part of you that felt bad, that you'd felt like you were responsible for not replying to them, and that has maybe had an impact on how you feel about appearing or doing shows for people?
No, I wouldn't say so because I wasn't. That wasn't my thing, Tom. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't on Twitter. I wasn't on Instagram. I wasn't on. The only thing I had probably was Facebook.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you know
It's
that was
died
just
now.
no. But Facebook was just Facebook.
Yeah, yeah.
Facebook, so I could contact my mates and stuff like that, old school mates. That was it. But the fact that he said that, I think what got me going was somebody was impersonating me, and they could really harm who I am because they could be putting anything out there. People
Did you look
think
at
it's
the
me.
account? Did you look at what they were putting?
No, I didn't look at. I mentioned it to somebody, and they had a look, and they said, "No, he's the person's trying to be you." So I said, "Well, I've got to nip that in the bud straight away." I mean, me looking at somebody trying to be me wouldn't be good. I just don't think that would be good.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, right, how do I go on there and get verified? Because if people are going to be following me, they've got to know it's me and not somebody else. So. Again, my son helped me with his agent. They helped me and got it all sorted out. And I took to it in the end. You know, I got there and now I'm leaving messages in the morning. I'm, trying to help people along.
Yeah, I see.
I
see a lot of the time you do like have a great Thursday, have a great Monday. Like that's you don't have to do that, but you do.
No.
And I think people appreciate it. And I think from the replies you see, people appreciate it. So yeah.
Do you know what, Tom? I think the most important thing is whichever team you support, whoever you are, this life is about people. And it might just, you know what? People might not even respond to what I put in the morning. But even if one person responds and says, I needed that,
Yeah.
that's what it's for. Because you know what? We all need a lift sometimes.
I think it's really important, especially in such a divisive fan base as Arsenal, as you and I know, this world of Arsenal can really trigger people very easily. And despite myself and you, and think something I see that I share in common is that we try and be as positive as we can and as optimistic as we can and treat people with respect, even if you do your utmost at times. There is always going to be some kind of backlash to something you've said, tweeted, had an opinion on. Have you ever dealt with that? And have you ever acknowledged that? Have you ever bitten? Have you taken the bait ever before?
No, listen, what sometimes what I do, sometimes I read it and I put, I respect your opinion. Whether because not everybody has to agree with me because I've played. That don't mean that they're going to agree with me, Tom.
Yeah.
But one thing I do is I'm big enough and I'm hard-headed enough to read what they put, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I respect what they say. If they get abusive, then I shut it down.
Yeah.
I've never blocked one person on Twitter. Never.
Really?
Never.
That's
not
really
one.
interesting. Why? Why have you not done that?
But why would I?
Well,
why
I
would
block
I block
someone because if someone's been abused, so on the channel, I basically have a no hold bar rule. Like, there's no chances, there's no first strikes. If someone's abusive in the chat, I block them immediately. And it's kind of a way in which I've cultivated a community here, which is full of what I would hope for 99.9% of respectful people. So why have you not done the same thing?
I think if you're talking about Gooner talk, that's different.
I
personal.
do on Twitter too. I do tend to block people straight away if they're abusive on Twitter.
Right, but maybe that's the mold you're in because you're just not being an ex-player.
Yeah,
I'm used to dealing with the nasties. I'm used to dealing with people coming up to you and you're playing away from home and they're giving you stick and I'm used to it. I'm used to dealing with all the nasty people, all the nasty things that people want to say. I know how to deal with it. I'm big enough, I'm strong enough, and I'm probably hard-headed enough to accept it. Hey, that's no problem. You could say what you like. You could say what you like about me. The key is the points. That's always, and the principles. That's it for me. I don't need to block anyone. Why should I?
It genuinely staggers me because I find it so because I'm such the opposite end of the spectrum on this, and I don't necessarily think it's because I don't have thick skin. I think to be on like YouTube or anything like that, you need to have a level of of a
of
buffer.
toughness. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, to deal with the stuff that comes your way. And it's so interesting to me that you've never blocked anyone. Do you think it's a case of, I remember when you used to grow up and your parents would say to you, just ignore it. And if you ignore someone, they'll eventually lose interest and they'll stop abusing it. Have you found that? Is that any part of it?
Yes, of course it is. Sometimes, listen, I've got a very large toolbox down here that I use my spanners to get around. And you know what, Tom? You find sometimes you might read something and you want to react.
Yeah.
But I always give myself 10 seconds. Myself 10 seconds. Always.
That's just something I lack, I think, because
Yeah.
I was listening to, I think it was Darren Brown, who's the illusionist and guy, and he did a great series on Audible talking about like your system 1 brain and your system 2 brain, and like your system 1 brain makes you want to just flick straight away as soon as someone says something, or if someone says something in the street, or you're driving and someone does something. Your system 1 brain is your fighter, your road rager, your responder on social media. But your system 2 brain's all about kind of taking 10 seconds, think about what the response and go from there. And I've tried to train myself up a bit more, but I still do fail sometimes. And you end up just like biting back straight away, or you want to get a reply in, because if you feel like you don't get a reply in quick enough, you're losing the argument style of thing.
Yeah.
But I can see it from your facial expressions how kind of easy you find it. And I'm really envious of this ability.
Yeah, but Tom, you got to remember, this is all part and parcel of when you play for a club like Arsenal. The Arsenal stands for so much. And other people and teams and fans hate you. The media hate you. So just imagine. So you're getting it from everywhere. Now, if you're gonna fight everyone, you end up fighting the world. You can't do it. So you learn how to use that toolbox, mix and match, right? You know the right spanners for this. You know what I mean? You know what's needed. So that's what I use, and it works. It works for me anyway.
No, yeah, I think that's the case. I think everyone will have their own toolbox, as you say. Some will be applicable to some might not be applicable to others. Let's talk about Hybrid Squad, because obviously I'm good friends with Sophie and enjoy my time there, and of course with Amanda as well. And despite the show not being with Amanda and Sophie anymore, you continue that on, and you've done that with Sophie, and it's expanding. And Sophie's putting in a lot of work to put on shows nearly every single day. You're very invested in it. I'm looking forward to seeing our show we did recently. If you are watching, stay tuned to the Hybrid Squad. You'll be able to get that content very soon. But talk to me about your relationship with Sophie, because it's great, you two, and the dynamic you have when you do the shows together.
Yeah, I think this is something that has just evolved, really. Me coming on as a guest previously, got on with everybody, that type of... They are that type of character. Sophie's a great girl. Amanda was a great girl. There were 2 other girls, Sophie, Sophia, etc. were on. And then it kind of whittled down to Sophie and Amanda. And, they asked me, could you come on a bit more? So I said, if I've got the time, yeah, no problem. And it kind of coincided. I've got a few evenings free, whatever. So I used to come on a little bit more. And then as it started to wear on, COVID come. So we're doing shows, and you know that the fan base are there, and we're all nice people, and we're saying, we need to do this more regular, because just to give people twice a week isn't enough. We need to do it daily now that the audience is there. Yeah. So let's make a commitment to the fans and do it. So that's what we've done, and obviously it's moved on. We're kind of through COVID a little bit better now, etc. Obviously, Princess Gooner is no longer on. She's still a wonderful person, etc. So now I find it's just me and Sophie. And I think, well, you've probably seen the dynamic of me and Sophie. We'll argue like crazy at times. Do you know what I mean? We'll argue.
trophy, you know.
No, but that's the great thing, and she's brought in a system of yellow and red cards, and
Yeah.
not only for us but the squaddies as well. And I think the dynamic has just really pushed on. It's gone to another level. I think a lot of people are starting to discover the Highbury squad now and see what we do. And I think a lot of people like it because she's coming really from a fan's point of view. I'm coming from a player's point of view, and it's an interesting dynamic.
Currently on 8.17 thousand subs, closing very much in on that 10,000. If you aren't already, please don't go and subscribe. Sophie comes on here all the time, and I'm always happy to jump over on the Hybrid Squad, and you see me plenty on there as well, with a lot of familiar faces, I'm sure. Now, the other kind of big Arsenal fan in your life is, ironically, was our first guest on this new series, Mr. J.
Yes.
He told some really funny stories about yourself, and obviously it's weird because the start of your kind of friendship together, I remember being there very close to start because the Watford game, and we spoke about this on the show that we did on the Highbury Squad, which will be coming out as we say, is kind of, it's interesting because that night I look at as one of my key three, as a bit of a spoiler, favourite memories of being an Arsenal fan, because it was a case of everyone that I'd known on the social side of things, on YouTube, with it being Mike coming all the way from the US, from Washington, from judges coming to the game. And obviously, I think it was one of the first times I'd really met up with him. And obviously everyone else around. I think Potsy might have been there as well, actually. But there was so many people there. And you'd obviously become good friends with judges prior to that. And it's so funny because the way he talks about you is as if you've been friends your entire life.
It feels that way, Tom. Honestly, it does.
Is that a good thing?
Well, with Lee, well, he's on half pints, said he, so he's all right with that.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing about Lee was, obviously, at AFTV, and for anybody who don't realize, players love to watch that because you get the feeling of the fans. AFTV isn't as big as it was because there weren't no feeling there. The feeling of the fans is important to ex-players as well because we are part of the club. So I used to watch, and Lee was always passionate about it and stuff like that. And then I went to a game and stuff like that. We got introduced, and we just got talking, and we clicked. We're friends, no problem. We said we'll meet up. I said I'll let you know when I'm down for a game, etc. So he came down for a game, and then obviously there's that Watford game. Now the Watford game, let's be honest, that was crazy. That was the Troy Deeney saying that we haven't got any cojones.
Yeah,
he misses the Petr saves his penalty.
Who never saves penalties?
Who never say? It was, things just slotted into place. Magic Mike was over, as you said, Tom. At the pins, there was everybody who was anybody really came to the pins. Claude, bless him, was there as well. And I remember waiting for the guys to do their AFTV slots, and then we obviously went up to the pins. And the atmosphere was just nice because we'd won a game and stuff like that. But there ain't many people who you just click with in this life. But me and Lee just clicked, and we've had plenty of good times, plenty of jokes, and helping him and supporting him. And I'm doing a show, chatting with Campbell on Lee Judge's TV as well.
Yeah.
So help. I try and help where I can, Tom.
I don't doubt that for a second. Judges is obviously doing really well with his new channel, and obviously with his work of AFTV, as you know, the AFTV thing is, I feel like it's going to be a theme that will come across in a lot of the shows that we do on this series. But you talk about it that the players kind of love it from that perspective. Judges told us a story about Paul Merson and about how he feels like he sees judges saying things and he's loved. Merson said he says things and he's hated. Do you think that there's, I don't know what the right word is, but do you know ex-players?
Hypocrisy.
Yeah, maybe hypocrisy.
A little bit of hypocrisy. Yes, there is. And I tell you why, Tom. Lee Judges is a fan. He hasn't played for the club. When you've played for the club, fans want you to protect the football club. They don't want you to. They don't want you to lie.
Yeah.
But there's a certain way that you have to say things to protect the football club. Now, and you have to be quite smart and cute how you do it sometimes, because sometimes you're asked on a moment, and you come out and you fire, and then all of a sudden it upset. You can't protect everybody. You can't not upset everybody, because some people are going to get triggered by what you say. But I think Paul Merson at times has triggered people time and time again, where really you didn't need to do that. And so I get it. Lee could say stuff and Merce can't, but that's one of the privileges of playing for the Arsenal.
Yeah, and I suppose the other direction as well, like the privilege of being a fan, is you don't have that responsibility in the same way.
Yeah, you could just let shots. Go. Yeah, fire shots and let it off. You could just let off and let your feelings out. But playing for Arsenal, you've got to protect that club, that badge. It means too much, Tom.
So do you think then do you think you've said anything on a YouTube channel, on an interview, on Sky, on Amazon, whatever, where you felt influenced and you haven't necessarily said maybe what you wanted to say because of that responsibility?
No, never.
That's really interesting.
I will always speak my mind. And if I think Arsenal are doing bad, I would say Arsenal are doing bad. But the key is, Tom, what I try and do is explain why they're doing bad.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to just say, this one's rubbish and that one's rubbish. But, my mantra all throughout this difficult period we've had is, it's the players. It is the players. The players go on that pitch, and if they're not good enough to perform or be consistent, then we're going nowhere. I got hammered at times. I was called deluded Campbell. I was called everything. but you know what, Tom? Like I said before, I get it. It's okay. And now what's happened, Tom? You see, there's people who's been brought in. Fans have been, we spent 150 million and who have we got? And now you're starting to see there's a little bit of feeling there with the players. And now we're starting to move on in the right direction. So the manager can only take the players so far. It's the players that do the business. So
it's so interesting listening to kind of the responsibility, and yet at that same time you manage to kind of go forwards with this legitimate, what is the right word, way of voicing a view and not having it influenced by the fact that you used to play for the club.
Tom, hold on. I've also been called Mikel Arteta's lawyer. Believe it. I've been called
that at times.
Right. You're Mikel Arteta's lawyer. You protect him. You do this. No. The thing is, I said, fair enough. I'm Mikel Arteta's lawyer. No problem. You could call me that. I said, but here's the thing. I know what it takes to get results at Arsenal. I know what I see. And what I see, I know what a winning team is. You know what a winning team is. We haven't got a winning team. Yeah. Because you can't see it. We don't connect to it. Why do you think people connect with Kieran Tierney? Why do you think people connect with Tommy Arsu, Gabriel, Ramsdale, and Ben White? They're starting to really realise Ben White's he's a fine player. He's going to take a little bit of time to get used to that 50 million transfer fee, but he is a fine player. Thomas Partey, etc. Why? Because you can relate to them. They go on the pitch and they put the work in. We've had enough players who've never done that, Tom. Well, we've had enough players. And listen, bringing people to the club and it don't work out, I get that. Fair enough. But you got to quickly move on. And that's what they've done. They've quickly moved on. But now you're starting to see a little bit of shape, at least.
Yeah, and that is the kind of, to bring it back round to football, is one of the big things about why I'm nearly getting back on the train of Arteta, I suppose. I've had a period where I thought a change of coach was probably the right decision. It was mainly after the emotion of the Villarreal defeat. all I've wanted to see from Arteta is a style, a system, something that I can tangibly relate to and see. Yeah, look, this is work. I can see what he's trying to do, and a lot of that comes from the off the pitch stuff. And I wrote a piece today on FL about, which is coming out this evening, I think. In fact, I think it's coming in about 30 minutes. Is about Leno's comments that came out today, and about how he said that he doesn't really know why he's been dropped. But the irony is that Aaron Ramsdale, when he was signed for the club, turned around in an interview and said, "But Leno's been fantastic, but I'm coming to take his shirt." And what Leno could have done is turn around and said, "Ramsdale's been brilliant. I am going to fight to get my shirt back."
100%.
And that's the difference between a player that Arteta wanted to sign and the character, and a player that a previous regime signed in Bernd Leno. So I am more than happy for us to move Bernd Leno on if that's the attitude after having your place stolen. I want players that if they have their place stolen are fighting tooth and nail to get it back, not going, "Oh, I'm going to go off to Inter Milan or to wherever else." Like that's, and I feel like Arteta's building that now. And if I can see what I saw on Sunday against Spurs consistently, then I'll be more than happy to jump back on that Arteta train.
I think you're right there, Tom. I think a lot of people are starting to realise we've been shortchanged in previous years. You know, we've had wonderful players, but the consistency hasn't been there. Why? Because the commitment hasn't been there. The commitment of the players to go across that white line and do their job.
Yeah.
Tommy Yasu's come in. I mean, he flew out his comments. What he said about once he knew Arsenal were interested, he didn't need to speak to anybody. No. You know, I didn't even speak to the manager. He's coming over no matter what. He's coming to sign. That makes me feel even more connected to him. You know, signing these players. Ben White came. You know, Kieran Tierney, who was he's been one of the shining lights in the team. Against Spurs, he could just do his job. He doesn't need to be this swashbuckling fullback who tries to do everything. He could just do his job. And that's the difference. Having players who really want it, which we're seeing now, and I know we're nowhere near where we want to be, Tom.
Yeah.
But we've got to sign players, forget the names on the back. We've got to sign players who want to play for Arsenal and want to fight for Arsenal. If we do that, I'm telling you, we'll be in a much better place. And Mikel Arteta and Edu are going to sweep all the players who have been they're going to be gone.
Yeah.
So the whole squad has to change, and it will.
I am genuinely, for the first time in a while, again, excited about Arsenal. And I did take a dip. Honestly, I'd have to admit I took a bit of a dip with kind of the excitement around the club because of how poor back-to-back 8th place finishes will do that to a lot of fans, I'm sure. Yeah. But when you can see, as you say, this tangible evidence of a style of players that are fighters that want to play for this club, it does transform the mood. And I think we saw that on Sunday. Mr. Kevin Campbell, everybody, thank you ever so much for those that have tuned in and listened. Really appreciate your time. If you could drop a like on today's video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We'll be doing this series every week or so. I've got a couple of really cool guests lined up to join us every week. But Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, as it always is. I feel weird calling you Kevin. I should just be Kev. It's just so...
Kevin, call me... deluded, Mr. Deluded, whatever.
Arteta's
call me what you
lawyer.
Like. Arteta's liar. Call me what you... Listen, I don't mind. Do you know why? Here's the funny thing, Tom, just before we close. I don't mind being called any of those things. You know why? Because our battles are in-house. But when you get the media who absolutely slay us, and then when Arsenal win, now it's how bad Spurs were, I can't have that.
As a member of the media now, I can say I'm fighting the fight. I'm doing it from
just like me. Just like me. I'm fighting the fight.
Fighting the fight is all it's about. Thank you, Kev, for coming on. Really appreciate your time. But we will see, as I said, we'll see you tomorrow morning, as always, for the 8 a.m. morning show, and plenty more content to come as well. See you soon, guys. Have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. And as always, up the Arsenal.